My name is Alexis Lefkowitz. I'm going to be analyzing three prominent characters in Franz Kafka's novella, The Metamorphosis. These three characters, Mr. and Mrs. Samsa and Greet, all have conflicting ways that they go about Gregor's transformation. Mrs. Samsa is more loving, and she is in denial about her son's transformation. She just wants him back. Mr. Samsa is a violent man who had no remorse for Gregor because he was actually jealous of his work. Greet was the most humane towards Gregor. She would bring him food and visit him while he was under the couch. No matter how different these characters' relationships were with Gregor, they all ended up resenting him in the end. The novella had an out-of-the-ordinary way of examining a very mundane subject matter, the effect of a 9-to-5 job on someone and their family. The reader is left to decide between whether it is worse to be a grotesque creature, like Gregor, or to act like one, like the Samsa family. Gregor and his mother were definitely closer than he was with his father. Gregor's mother was the first person to check on him the morning of his transformation. Greet and Gregor's father made sure his mother would not see Gregor because they do not want her to be shocked or worried at the sight. Quote, incidentally, the mother wanted to visit Gregor, but the father and the sister out her off with logical arguments that Gregor listened to very attentively and approved of wholeheartedly. End quote. This is different from the rest of the family. Gregor's father does not want to have anything to do with him, and Greet will only see him under the couch, but his mother really wants to see him. This is a symbol that she loves him even though he cannot speak to her and he does not look the same. The climax of the story was when the family moved all of Gregor's furniture out of his room. His mother stated, quote, I think it would be best if we tried to keep the room exactly as it was before, so that when Gregor comes back to us, he can find everything unchanged. End quote. The mother is acting as a symbol of hope. She is still holding out that her son will come back to his original form. The first time Mrs. Samsa sees Gregor, she fainted. Her whole demeanor towards him shifts at this moment. Her fainting shows Gregor that now even his mother does not love him. She has accepted that he is no longer her son. He is a bug. Finally, Gregor's death shows the end of his mother's transformation. She reacted with no emotion to the news. Mrs. Samsa did not even investigate the death. She allowed the chairwoman to dispose of him. As for his father, Gregor took over the responsibilities of working for his family after his father's business failed 5 years prior. This damaged his father because he stopped working, so he essentially lost his purpose in this capitalist society. Gregor's father resented him even before the transformation, which is why he was the most harsh towards Gregor during his difficult time. Right after his metamorphosis, Gregor's father was not focused on the well-being of his son. He was only focused on the well-being of his bank account. He only wanted to hide Gregor away, which is one of the reasons Gregor started viewing himself as a burden. Quote, naturally, it did not occur to the father in his present mood to open the other wing of the door to give Gregor a wide enough passage. He was fixed on the idea of getting Gregor back in his room as quickly as possible. This quote shows that Mr. Samsa was never accommodational towards Gregor, even though Gregor was always accommodational towards him. During a major turning point in the story, there was a confrontation between Gregor and his father. Quote, a weakly thrown apple grazed Gregor's back, but skidded off harmlessly. However, another thrown immediately after that one drove into Gregor's back really hard. End quote. The apple being thrown is a symbol for Gregor's father's resentment. He feels there is no use for Gregor anymore. This is a paradox because Gregor could never do the right thing in his father's eyes. When he was working, his father resented him for taking away his purpose in life. But when Gregor could no longer work, his father resented him for not working. The reader can also see some of Kafka's personal life coming through in the story because, like Gregor, he had a very strained relationship with his own father. Greet is definitely the most important character in the novella besides Gregor. She is actually the only other character that is addressed by name. The close relationship between Greet and Gregor can be seen through this quote. If only the sister had been there. She was perceptive. She had already begun to cry when Gregor was still lying quietly on his back. End quote. Greet's tears are a symbol of love and communication. She knew something was horribly wrong. Kafka has some interesting diction here by using the word already. It is as though Greet knew that the situation would not rectify itself even before Gregor did. Greet became Gregor's primary caretaker. She really cared about him and was the only human contact for basically the whole book that Gregor had. Her care slowly started to diminish as she was going through her own transformation from girl to woman. Quote, no longer concerning herself about what Gregor might particularly care for, the sister hesitantly shoved any old food through the door to Gregor's room with her foot. Disregard for Gregor shows Greet now thinks of her role as caretaker as more of a chore or job rather than a caring sister. At this point, Gregor was barely eating, and Greet didn't even notice. Gregor realized Greet finally succumbed to the fact that he was now a bug when the incident with the violin occurred. All Gregor wanted was to have his relationship with his sister back. That's why he crawled out of his room to hear her play the violin. He wanted to be her caretaker instead of her being his. It was at this moment when Greet's transformation was finally done. She was the one who decided they needed to get rid of Gregor, or it, as he is now referred to as. Quote, dear parents, we can't go on like this. If you perhaps don't realize it, I do. In front of this monstrous creature, I refuse to pronounce my brother's name, and therefore I merely say, we have to get rid of it. We've tried all that's humanly possible to take care of it and put up with it. I think no one can reproach us in the slightest. These are the most heartbreaking words in the story. Even though Gregor had not died yet, he was dead in Greet's heart, which is really all that matters. The resolution of this novella is at Gregor's death. The family lets out a collective sigh of relief, like a burden was taken off their shoulders. The three members of the family represent a lot of different emotions. The father represents resentment, violence, and cruelty. The mother represents denial and hope. Finally, Greet represents caring and resentment. They all had very different reactions to Gregor, but in the end they were all the same. What Gregor had become on the outside is what they had become on the inside. Now, after listening to this insightful podcast, I'm going to ask again, is it worse to be a grotesque creature like Gregor, or to act like one, like the Samsa family?